समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
India today drew its red line and made that red line clear to American President Donald Trump. India's envoy to Russia, speaking to Russian media, said that India will purchase oil wherever it gets the best deal. Remember, Russian oil has been the bogey used by the Trump administration to impose a 50% tariff on India. This development comes even as Trump announces a new envoy, a political appointee, one close to him, but also an ambassador who will serve as special envoy for South and Central Asia, leaving opinion divided on whether this is actually an attempt at a patch-up or a softening of a kind, or yet another affirmation of Trump's obsessive interest in quote-unquote mediating or hyphenating India with Pakistan. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. On the program today, we look at the very important statement that has come from India's envoy to Russia, drawing a very, very clear red line in the sand, making it clear while speaking to Russian media that India would buy oil from wherever it gets the best deal. Remember, the purchase of Russian oil has been used by the Trump administration as a reason to quote-unquote penalize India with a penalty that has led to the tariffs now being 50%. India has made it clear that it will not bend. This even as Vice President Vance links the tariffs on India with an attempt to end the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Now, all of this is taking place as the Trump administration has announced that Sergio Gore, a man once described to be a snake by Elon Musk, a 38-year-old with a very, very direct link to Donald Trump, will be in the United States ambassador to India, this after a gap of 7 months. However, Mr. Gore will also be the special envoy for South and Central Asia, reviving concerns about Trump's attempt to hyphenate the region and pull in Pakistan into the equation. How should we read all that has happened? Remember, this is also a week in which Prime Minister will be traveling to China for the SCO summit. Let me introduce our very distinguished panel of experts today as the Trump story continues to dominate not just Indian but global headlines. Veteran diplomat Ambassador Veena Sikri is with us. Welcome, and it's always a pleasure. Also joining us is military veteran and thought leader General Raj Shukla. And also joining us is Yashovardhan Jha Azad, the man who pulls no punches in offering his opinion, a veteran IPS officer and also someone who's been in the Intelligence Bureau. Before I get started with all of you, I want to play out the latest statement we have from America. This is J.D. Vance, the American Vice President, talking to American media, once again linking the tariffs with the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Take a look.
Where exactly is the pressure on Russia to do anything if you're not right now imposing new sanctions? How do you get them to a place of getting to the table with Zelensky and stopping to drop bombs?
But Kristen, I think that question betrays a fundamental misunderstanding of where we are. The president has applied aggressive economic leverage, for example, the secondary tariffs on India, to try to make it harder for the Russians to get rich from their oil economy. He's tried to make it clear that Russia can be re-invited into the world economy if they stop the killing, but they're going to continue to be isolated if they don't stop the killing. The president has applied more economic pressure to the Russians to stop this war than Biden did in 3 years.
You know,
so the idea that we're not...
So J.D. Vance, once again, their Ambassador Sikri, seeks to link the secondary tariffs, as they're being called, the penalty, with Trump actually so-called putting pressure on Vladimir Putin. My question is this: when you read Vance's statement alongside the statement of India's ambassador to Russia, basically saying, hang on, we're a sovereign nation. We're going to buy oil where we get the best price. That's what any country would do. How do you read what's happening? And when you further join the dots with the announcement of this new ambassador, subject to confirmation, what are you seeing? What's the writing on the wall you're reading?
Well, thank you, Barkha. Always good to be on your show. I think that in addition to what our ambassador to Russia has said, I would like to also point out to what External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar said, I think 2 days ago at an important forum in Delhi. And he said we have 3 red lines. One, the first red line, he said, is on trades and tariffs, and we will always protect the interest of our farmers, of our dairy producers, of our micro and small entrepreneurs. That's number one. Number two, he said, on the purchase of oil from Russia, making the same point that the ambassador to Moscow has made, that we will continue to buy wherever it's the most beneficial for India, and there's no chance of our letting up on purchase of Russian oil. The third point he made, which is very relevant to what you have just said about the new appointment of the American ambassador, he said that our third line is on third-party mediation between India and Pakistan. So he has drawn these 3 red lines very clearly.
Ma'am, repeat the last point. We lost you there for a bit. Repeat the third point.
The third point he said was we will never accept third-party mediation on India and Pakistan. So I think these 3 lines really sum up India's very clear, crystal clear position on the subject. And we have said repeatedly, not only to the Americans, but in media articles, in interviews, that it is absolutely amazing to see that a country like China, who buys much more oil from Russia than India does, has been completely let off on the question of additional tariffs. And they've just been given a second 90-day pass in addition to the first 90-day free pass. And the European Union itself buys oil from Russia and is continuing to do so, in addition to what they are buying, of course, through India. So to say that India is the only country benefiting is complete, if I may say so, unacceptable hypocrisy. So this is one
Absolutely. But can I ask you something? Can I ask you a follow-up there before I open it up? You said that, FM Jaishankar, one of the red lines he drew was no third-party mediation. How concerned are you? Because, I've heard 2 different narratives on the appointment of Sergio Gore as the ambassador to India, but also the envoy for South Asia. One narrative says, well, New Delhi has been acknowledged as the pivot of the region. And, it's no skin off our back. Another narrative says it is extremely concerning that the ambassador of the United States to India will also be the envoy for South Asia. There seems to be a continued push by the Trump administration to insert itself somehow into the relationship between India and Pakistan. And if you go back to the time that Richard Holbrooke, this was attempted to be done with Richard Holbrooke when he was the envoy for what's called AFPAC, Afghanistan and Pakistan. And India pushed back hard, saying that we will not be named in that nomenclature. So I want to ask you, how concerned are you at this Sergio Gore appointment?
Well, I think very clearly that after External Affairs Minister's third red line, I think we are going to make it very clear to everybody in the US or anywhere else that it matters, that we can never accept third-party mediation, whether Sergio Gore is going to be the envoy or anybody else. And I think that there are a lot of reports, as you said, differently. One report even said today from a correspondent based in Washington that actually Sergio Gore is being eased out of the White House, and there's some internal problem in the White House, and that's why he's being eased out. And that he himself has asked President Trump for this additional responsibility to give himself a greater importance and to be named as the special envoy for that. But you're quite right to draw the example of Richard Holbrooke. That is very clear. And just as we drew the red line at that time, I think we're going to be equally clear on drawing the red line this time. And I must tell you a very interesting point also, that the Deputy Prime Minister of Pakistan, Yashovardhan Jha Azad, has also said that actually we never asked America to intervene. So, he has also pointed that out. I think there might be a difference in Pakistan between the Field Marshal Asim Munir and the civilian administration led by Shahbaz Sharif and Yashovardhan Jha Azad. So I think there are a lot of confusion on that. All we need to do is to absolutely make it clear that there is no question of third-party mediation. If Sergio Gore should have any ideas in that direction, he should have no illusions about it before he lands up here. And I'm sure that even, before he comes here, our ambassador in Washington, Veena, will be meeting Sergio Gore, and will be meeting a lot of other people, including Marco Rubio and President Trump himself. At every stage, this point is going to be made clear. And I mean, Sergio Gore is most welcome. It's very good that ambassador has been appointed. But absolutely on third-party mediation with Pakistan, there is no question of this being a red line that will remain and will not be altered.
Okay, let's open this up now. Yashovardhan Azad, let me bring you in, and then I'll come to General Raj Shukla. Anything that you see that looks like progress, or are we still in a nosediving relationship?
I think certainly with the appointment of Gore, this is a nosediving relationship. I mean, I would feel insulted that an envoy of South Asia for South Asia, looks after India's affairs. And the worst part is, you see, we don't worry about third-party attempts at mediation because we ignore it and we say that we don't believe in it. But the question is, the moment you have a man like Gore, who's Trump's man, and then he high-fives India and Pakistan and starts commenting on our, ceasefire violations or firings across the border or the attempts made or talks on terrorism, it's going to be a huge mess. And that's why I think this, I don't know whether it's just a general hubris on the part of Trump or especially directed against India. This is one of the reasons I think where India must intervene and make it a point that we don't accept envoys like this who can speak for the entire committee of nations. If you have something for India is important enough, and in fact he should not be the same guy even for Pakistan.
So you are actually saying that India should resist or protest or object to the scope of work of this appointment. Yasho?
Yes.
And what would the objection precisely say, according to you?
That should be that if there is a person who's accredited only to India, then he can understand much better India's perspectives. And mind you, in a situation like this, where Mr. Trump has already cut deals, oil deals or crypto deals or whatever other secret deals he has done with Pakistan, more the reason that India is a standalone partner and is not represented by an envoy who's representing a whole, a bunch of nations. I am extremely worried personally because he's considered to be a real Trump man. And if you have this kind of Trumpism be exhibited on India-Pakistan relationships, then God have you. The least they can do is to stay away, because that's how India manages its relationships. But if tomorrow, if Trump continues with his comments that, see, we stopped the war, and then his envoy starts commenting on each and every action of India pertaining to India, then we've had it. That is one of the strongest reasons why we cannot have this kind of an envoy here.
Okay, let me bring in General Raj Shukla at this point. General Shukla, this Russian oil is in fact such a bogey, right? It's such a bogey because in fact it is the Trump administration that is taking a 10% markup in the weapons that it is selling to Europe, that is then providing them to Kyiv. In other words, America is not providing this weaponry, these weapon systems free, right? It is actually making a profit of them. And they're trying to justify this by saying it pays for the air cover and so on. But there's another Wall Street Journal report that actually talks about a $1 billion deal, and that $1 billion is being footed by 4 European countries to buy these weapons and give them to Zelensky or Ukraine's armed forces. So all this about India profiteering is, of course, a bunch of nonsense. Now, we have two varying opinions on the appointment of this envoy. Ambassador Sikri, cautiously optimistic. Maybe he's Trump's man. Maybe he's being eased out. No question of mediation. The red line is clear. Yasho saying, object. Don't accept it. Object it and say we need a full-time ambassador for India. Now, is anyone I don't know. How do you see it, General Shukla?
So let me just speculate. So if Sergei Gore, I mean, if that's how you pronounce his name, he's from the inner citadel of Trump. Let's assume he's a very close friend of Trump. Given the hardening positions, these red lines which are being spelled out, what will he do, even if he's a very close friend of Trump? I'm saying the damage has already been done. The trust has been so badly vitiated that even if they send J.D. Vance as ambassador, I don't think he'll be able to pull out the relationship out of the trouble. And I also see a wider hardening of positions against this MAGA madness. You just let's turn our eyes to Ukraine. The Europeans not only united around Zelensky, they seem to be protecting him and kind of told Trump that there will be a united European position on your deal. Putin is far too smart for Trump, in my view. Putin knows that he is winning on the ground. He is winning on the battlefront. And as long as he's winning on the battlefront, he's certainly not going to do a ceasefire, and he's going to do a peace agreement on his terms. So this whole, I think what Mr. Azad said, hubris of Trump is turning out to be quite fake. Who's listening to him now? Not the Europeans, not the Russians. The Brazilians have stood up. India has, outlined its red lines. So I think this MAGA madness of Trump is in deep trouble. Let's also go into some facts. You were mentioning, just give me 30 seconds more. I mean, let's look at somebody like J.D. Vance, who's supposed to be a very intelligent man. It is common knowledge that the shadow fleets, this network of vessels which were supplying oil to Europe in a kind of nefarious manner, from the time the conflict started till today, their number has tripled 3 times. There is an American firm, I think Heatherford, which from 2022 to 24, its profits went up by 61%. You've spoken about the 10% markup on arms. All the Americans and all the Europeans are blatantly profiteering out of Ukraine, and they are lecturing us. So even on the facts, it doesn't make sense. But the larger point I would like to reiterate that Brazil, Russia, India, China are now standing up to the unreasonableness of Trump and MAGA. It may just be on its last legs.
But you didn't say anything about the appointment itself of an envoy who covers both regions. And before I come back to Ambassador Sikri, I want your take on that.
So
not both regions, the entire region. A lot of people have said, why do you assume it's Pakistan? There's also Bangladesh, there's also Bhutan, there's also Sri Lanka. So I mean, I take that point. We tend to think,
that is exactly the point I can't figure out. Either Trump is smart or he's clever by half. So if he's smart, he's got a man from his inner circle to come to India and pull the relationship out of the trouble. And if he's clever by half, he send your man from your inner citadel and do this business with the entire South Asia. I mean, he's asking for trouble. The Indians are going to push back. So I can't figure out what is Trump up to. And therefore, I call it this MAGA madness. It doesn't seem to be on many fronts.
Ambassador Sikri, one of the other comments made by Foreign Minister Jaishankar at the same conclave was that the world, it wasn't just India, it was the world that was dealing with the president who conducted foreign policy in the public eye, and to that extent, everybody's having to make this adjustment. So when General Raj Shukla says he doesn't understand Trump, I think everybody must be saying that either out loud or in private. But I think I want you to respond specifically on this Sergio Gore getting the South Asia and Central Asia role. Do you agree with Yashovardhan Azad that actually there should be an objection, there should be a pushback, just like there was in Holbrooke's time?
I think that pushback will take place, but quietly. I think that just as happened in the time of Richard Holbrooke, it's not that you make a big noise about your discussions, internal discussions with whom you're talking, but you do have a quiet pushback because this is completely unusual. It comes at a time when you're seeing American participation in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, Myanmar, even your, this whole humanitarian corridor proposal seems to be reactivating at some level. And you're seeing, in Central Asia, the Azerbaijan, Armenia, that trip, that big corridor, that pipeline that America wants to build with all kinds of things. So there is a huge direct involvement of America that is growing in this region, South Asia and Central Asia. And it's no doubt because of that President Trump has, or that Sergio Gore has requested President Trump to give him this additional assignment. Now, let us see what happens, whether the pushback will happen, as I said, quietly, and let us see whether there's a change or whether there's going to be any formal iteration. That is the critical part. Is there going to be a formal iteration of Sergio Gore's responsibilities as special envoy? Now, that can create definite problems, because it means that, he's not only going to be working here, and we want him to be personally focused on India, to understand India's point of view, to take it back to America, to President Trump and others, and to, improve the relationship. That's the job of both ambassadors, isn't it? The Indian ambassador in Washington and the American ambassador here. So if he's going to be very diverse in his interest and attention, then the focus does not remain on India. So I think this is what the concern would be, in addition, of course, to the third party mediation, which I already pointed out. So I think there is going to be there's a lot of concern about it. There's no doubt about it. How the pushback will take place, how it will be formulated, whether it's going to happen quietly, whether it's going to happen directly, I think this is something that we're going to have to wait and see in the next few weeks. But of course, we haven't yet got the formal request for agreement yet. We've only had the announcement made on President Donald Trump's Truth Social. So I think that we have to wait and see. But it's good the ambassador has come, but the red lines of India will not change. I think that is the important point, that India is not going to give in on the red lines.
And that one of those red lines, Yashovardhan Azad, has been stated publicly by India's ambassador to Russia today, saying that don't tell us where to buy oil and where not to buy oil. And I think this is now a debate about sovereignty. It is not a debate about Russian oil. It's a debate about sovereign rights. And I think that's how people have to understand it. I think that's how it has to be framed. You were wanting to respond to Ambassador Sikri. Yasho, please go ahead. Can we unmute Yasho, please? Yasho, I can't hear you. So sorry. Yeah.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. You see, my point is, and this is related to what Ambassador Sikri or General Shukla had said earlier. See, this is a kind of a symbolism. India is the largest democracy. India is the partner. It's in a strategic relationships with the United States. In the South Asia, you have a committee of nations, as you rightly said, from Lanka, Bhutan, and so many other countries. Would India like to be treated as just one? India has one of the largest representations in the United States of America. From defense to almost intelligence and everything, we are with them. Yeah. We are in a strategic partnership against China, of course, informally, I would say now that they have their deals. So I think that this is time for a decisive action. And that's why it's extremely important. Now, the question is, given the position in the geopolitics, of course, Ambassador Sikri and General Shukla would know much, much more than me. I would just say that what are India's options right now? It's very easy to say that, if you have tariffs, then you weaken the dollar, typical economic, find diversified markets and things like that. But is it easy? Today, for the first time, I'm very happy the opposition is at least supporting the government on this. Against Trump tariffs, India is united, certainly, and that's one of the greatest points. So how do we start initiating? It's a very good thing, as Ambassador Sikri said, multipolar diplomacy, with BRICS and things like that, we should keep continuing. But this is an issue which we have to face, because this is going to damage the economy. And my last point is that, as a person who deals with internal security, and General Shukla will agree with me, on the internal security front, we need a stable economy. We need stable projections. We need that things should be so stable that we can tackle Naxalism, we can tackle Kashmir, we can tackle the Northeast. Therefore, this is a very, very great warning signal that we have. And I think we must have a very studied and a calibrated response.
I think it's a really important question about security, and I want to bring that to General Shukla. You've been talking about this, before Operation Sindoor, through Operation Sindoor, now with this Trump nosediving relationship, about preparedness. And, I think the point is that there are genuine concerns here, because you have a fraught relationship with America, and you are doing business with China. The Prime Minister will be going for the SCO summit on at the end of this month. But China was an active participant against you in Operation Sindoor. And China has expressed surprise is India's position on Taiwan. China's capture of our markets raises another set of concerns, because a kind of economic dependency has been built in that is seen to exert a kind of influence. So many concerns and not enough great options in terms of choices on the strategic table. General Shukla.
Yeah, so really, let me just go a little add to what Mr. Azad said. I think it's a moment of reckoning for Indian statecraft. We really have to, take some very serious decisions. And let's now link it to the wider strategic uncertainties and then come to India. If I have heard President Trump over the last 2 days in various statements, he seems to be saying this, that I have done my bit. This is in relation to Ukraine. Now I leave it to Zelensky and Putin. He was referring to that supposed bilateral. And he also said that in 2 weeks we'll take a decision. And one of the decisions he hinted could be that America will back off, which means, is Trump outsourcing the containment of Russia to Europe? That seems to be on his mind.
Yeah.
And a connected thing from that to me, and that's just a hunch, is Trump also saying that with respect to China, while America will continue to balance China in the area of the Western Pacific, in South Asia, he will cede this territory for India and China to find a modus vivendi, which means we are on our own. And here now I will make those, iterations which I've been making for long. I'm saying that our multi-alignment is in trouble. It's being challenged by the United States. I'd love to hear what Ambassador Sikri says. Look at the challenges before our strategic autonomy. Today, we have seen how conflict panned out in West Asia, Israel, in intimate partnership with US, Pakistan, with China, as you just pointed out. Who is our technology partner? So strategic autonomy, technological sovereignty, and operational poise. So this is really a time to step up our autonomous capacities. And I think we discussed on your show the Sudarshan Chakra that the Prime Minister was hinting at, is to, with speed, build this defense citadel, because the threats are overwhelming. Before you came on the show, Barkha, offline, I and Ambassador Sikri were having a chat. For the first time in 13 years, the Pakistani foreign minister is in Bangladesh. There are major defense deals being done. Munir and DG ISPR have stated openly that the next terror attacks will come from the east. If God forbid that happens, what do we do next time? Do we hit Pakistan? Do we hit Bangladesh? So very serious national security questions are out there. And I'm sure the establishment must be debating them. But the wider commentariat has to apply themselves to this. And they are really serious. And in the long term, for heaven's sake, let's develop some strategic choke points. What are those choke points? Rare earths, AI. I saw a very interesting show you did with somebody on AI. AI is about 20 chips, energy. We are nowhere in that dimension. It is these autonomous capacities. Unless we build them, our strategic autonomy may be in peril.
You've said it very bluntly, and I'm going to take last comments on exactly this point. What happens to India's strategic autonomy with so many balls up in the air? I'll start with you, Ambassador Sikri. I think we all agree that our strategic autonomy bothers this American administration. You have Pete Navarro not just writing in the FT, but coming forward and calling India a laundromat for the Kremlin, writing in the FT saying you want a strategic partnership, pick a side. Jaishankar has responded to that saying we've learned the vulnerability of actually being too dependent on any side. So if anything, the Americans are going to reinforce our instinct for multi-alignment. But I take General Shukla's point that a lot of these relationships are now not predictable. Pakistan and Bangladesh coming closer, China's interests in Bangladesh, Pakistan being a vassal state of China, us treading cautiously with China, fraught with America, the same America might cut a deal with China. I mean, there is a sense of not being able to war game this because all of it is upended.
Look, I think, thank you for pointing out all those complexities, including what General Shukla and Mr. Azad have said. I think the only answer is to reinforce our strategic autonomy. There is no other answer. Now we have to reinforce it. I agree fully that the basis of strategic autonomy is our economic continued economic growth. Now, that has to be a big focus. And I welcome, for example, the decision on saffron engines, which was announced 2 days ago from France. So we are not stopping at anything. We are doing our technology inputs from various sources. Look at the India-UK FTA. There was a very important and significant FTA, and that's going to lead, at least prospectively, to an doubling of the trade in the next 5 years. And so any shortfall that may be there with USA as a result of this, the tariffs, although we do know that there was some announcement from the USA that maybe they'll postpone the tariffs by 1 more month. So that announcement is also there. But the answer is to strengthen our strategic autonomy. There is no doubt that America is now becoming very vocal about it, but we do know that even under the Biden administration, there were always a lot of question marks and remarks on this. It has always been a big sticking point with America, but now we have even more valuable and confirmed about our multi-alignment. We are going to see possibly an American invasion of Venezuela in the next few weeks. That is also being talked about in a very big way. So I think we have to keep away from all of that and focus on our own economic growth. We have to ensure not only 6%, but maybe 8 to 9% economic growth every year, and we can do it because I think the talk is that just the GST reduction, with just 2 tabs and bringing it down, may release so much money for the consumers. It may and for entrepreneurial development that it might itself be the first boost, the first of the major reforms. There are many other major reforms that we're talking about. I think, for example, on the pharmaceutical sector, why are we continuing to be dependent on China for the API? For the active act, we were making them in India before 1991, and then China took it away, and we're not even bothering or getting it back. There should be some, urgent, very high level conviction that some companies, maybe even the PSUs, should start manufacturing these APIs, and so that our reduction on China goes down. Now, China, for example, the first time, very interestingly, when Wang Yi was in India recently, and he met Mr. Doval and Dr. Jaishankar, he actually, in the readout from Beijing, the word multipolarity was used for the first time. After a long time in a Chinese government readout, I saw them using the word multipolarity. So they themselves are struggling with their talks with USA. And we do know that at one point, China was keen, under Barack Obama especially, about the G2, that, America and China should get together and lead the world. And at that time, really, they were telling the Americans that, look, you leave India's in our part of the world, we'll deal with India directly. But now we've seen that there is a dependency between India and China. They do need our markets, and they have now promised that, yes, we will give you the rare earths, we'll give you the tunnel boring machines and the fertilizers, etc. So it's a transactional issue. I'm not thinking of China changing its stripes or anything like that. But I think that this question of multipolarity is gaining resonance, and maybe even China's rethinking, do they want to be in a G2? All that America is doing in Pakistan and in Bangladesh, it is really telling China, look, we also have, the Pakistan card is not yours, we have a stake in it. The Bangladesh card is not yours, we have a stake in it. We are coming into Myanmar, we're getting it. So these are a lot of this dance between USA and China as well. We are watching all that. We know what it's all about. We have to have our eyes and ears open. Yes, Bangladesh could very well be, a big possibility of that's what Pakistan wants. They were doing it. I saw this when I was ambassador in Bangladesh, and Begum Khaleda Zia was the prime minister. This is what's happening every day. For me, it's deja vu. Pakistan was using Bangladesh in those 3 years to launch all its terrorist attacks into India, and they are willing to do it. They want to do it again now, and we have to be very clear that no matter what it takes, we will not allow.
Yeah, let me just bring in, I think we just lost Ambassador Sikri at the tail end of her comment, but got the gist of that argument. There you are. Let me take that to Yashovardhan Azad. Mr. Azad, internal security a concern, external security a concern. Admiral Shekhar Sinha on this program was saying the other day, he said, forget 3-front war, forget 3.5-front war. There's only a 1-front war. There's China at every border. So, we've got to transact with China right now, but without huge dollops of trust.
Shekhar is right. Shekhar is absolutely right, in fact. Let me tell you, Barkha, that I have 4 points and closely aligned with General Shukla, what he was saying earlier. I really think that our intelligence outreach has to become much more extensive and intensive in the Northeast, especially with what is happening in Bangladesh. And in fact, when this meeting was taking place, Ambassador Sikri, Quran ki ayatein bhi padhi ja rahi thi. And there were a lot of things which are happening, which we just discussed. And therefore, this entire corridor, whether it's the Siliguri corridor in the northeast and the known places, which both the army and the intelligence has been pointing out, that they have to be really secure. That's number one. Number two, I firmly believe that, diplomacy has its limits. It has done a lot for us, but diplomacy comes from a strong internal strength. Therefore, our defense manufacturing base and the defense, priorities must be looked into very, very seriously, because that is also very much related with what relations we are going to have with China and how we are going to decide in future. It's easy to do, flights and, bilateral exchange and, a little bit of business here and there. But strategically, what are we going to do? That we have to decide. The third point is, of course, these AI, we don't have anything like a Google. We don't have anything like a DeepSeek. Our manufacturing capability, these are things which we need to look into war footing. How should we put Manipur in order so to become stable? We should give statehood to Kashmir to make it more stable. These are things now we can't just, keep sitting like the bills which are sitting with the governors, And of course, the last point which I said, there has to be a deeper thinking, deliberation, and, Ambassador Sikri's or General Shukla's can sit in that, see, what should we do with China? What should we do? What should we do? Calibrate, trade, what? This is something which has to be done now, because with America being unstable, like an unstable Wi-Fi that we have, we better be prepared. Because let me tell you, no matter what's said and done, Russia always stands by us. Whether it was with the treaty, whether it was without the treaty. And here we have greats. And one of the reasons, should I say, Barkha, please don't mind ambassadors and all that. One of the biggest reasons why we always remain friendly with America and talk about the future is because all the have the powers that be in India have their relatives, have their sons, have their entire families, and have connections with America. We cannot let go, because our sons and relatives don't want to go live in Russia or China and all these places. They love America, and therefore America is always our my-baap. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I think it's true that our cultural exposure of India's elite is very much to the West, in particular America, and not to the Chinese, not to the Russians. And that is a big factor. Jairam Ramesh in the old days had a line and it tried to capture both the anti-Americanism and the draw to America. And he said, a lot of Indians are like, Yankee, go home, but take me with you. And Yankee, go home and take me with you, because it was about this sort of, cultural, globalized, in a globalized world, the cultural affinity by India's elite, but yet the suspicion that America's out to get our self-esteem and our self-pride as a nation. I was going to give General Shukla the last word, but Ambassador Sikri, I saw your hand go up. Please respond, and then I'll give General Shukla the closing comment. Ambassador Sikri?
Yeah, I was going to add one point to what Mr. Azad was saying, a very important point. And I agree with all the points he's made that, we have to, these are very medium and long-term aspects that we have to focus on. Some of them are very immediate. One more is that why we are, yes, there is a feeling that we love America so much, but there is a lot of outreach that India has to do to all other countries, including America, to explain India to the rest of the world. And, that is something that, we are not doing enough. For example, in how many university programs across the world do you have serious, a serious section on India? And what are they teaching about India? So this business that the younger generation abroad must understand India better. And that will help a lot when these people are themselves as young professionals or in working careers. In Russia, for example, I found that in the new, when I was doing this report for ICCR, that in the new curriculum in Russian universities, there's very little about India. There is a love for India. Politically, it's there. I don't think that that Russia will ever let India down. But we need for the younger generation to bring them up to scratch. And this is something we have to work on very hard.
But I think you're absolutely right what both of you have said. But I think it's also true that what we call, General Shukla, a globalized world is in fact an Americanized world. And that is why those who've had exposure, whether it's food, clothing, music, university, education, books, right? I grew up in school being made to read the Russian classics, but I think, all of that sort of ended at some point. There's the Yankee go home but take me with you reference. But General Shukla, I'll give you the last word. Can we unmute General Shukla, please? Sir, are you muted at your end?
No.
Now go ahead. We can hear you now. Yeah. Go ahead, sir.
I was just saying, though, I don't have anybody very up close in America except a nephew. Yet I was taken in by the Americans. And I really thought that this was a period, what was that, from the stars to the seas. And I'm reminded, I think it was Mark Twain, if I'm not wrong, who said, the more a man reads and the wider he travels, the more likely he is to marry a country girl. So Russia is that country girl. We've returned to Russia. We've returned to strategic autonomy. But on this China point, I wish to make a serious argument. It is a long argument, but just let me present it in brief.
Yeah.
And that is this, that, having rebalanced to the north majorly now in terms of troops and all that stuff, we have with our startups some technologies. We can leverage those technologies to do what I call fail-proof deterrence along the LAC. It's entirely possible. And with the wider Indo-China relationship, I think we have to do a détente, which is to buy time to build capacities, because the gap is so great. And, Ambassador Sikri said economy. Of course, economy, but it's just not about GST. It's about these wider autonomous capacities, rare earths, so on and so forth. Unless we build that, we will never be in a position to be strategically autonomous. So fail-proof deterrence, détente, and a rapid building of autonomous capacities, which will include that Sudarshan Chakra.
Well, the bottom line is this. There are challenging times ahead. Let's not gloss over them. But I think India has responded as an assertive, sovereign, proud nation, acknowledging that there are challenges, but that remains the red line. And the answer to that, I think we all agree, the first step has to be economic growth, powering economic growth, no matter what it takes. And the GST reforms are very interestingly timed. I'm sure there is some thinking now in joining the dots between the economy and strategic security. We leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sikri, General Shukla, Yashovardhan Azad. Always a pleasure. Namaskar. Take care and see you soon. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.